In the last 3.5 years, we have sailed halfway around the world on our 37-foot boat, Florence, exploring new countries, new cultures, and sharing our adventure along the way. We're sailing from Debut to the Banda Islands in Indonesia, the original Spice Islands.
It's been an overnight sail from Debut. It's been brilliant conditions, sort of 15 to 18 knots with enough of a swell to help Florence along, a little bit of surfing, but are not enough to roll us so much that we can't sleep. So we're both still feeling really well rested, even though we've been up half the night each sailing Florence.
Just approaching Banda, which is our second island in Indonesia, and it's one of the original Spice Islands, so there's supposed to be lots of really interesting history here. But unfortunately the anchorages that are available are both really poor. The options are either to the north, which is really deep and steep too, we're talking like 30 meters, or to the south, which is much shallower but supposed to be poor holding. So what we're really hoping is that we can go alongside some friends who arrived earlier. They picked up a mooring and we can hopefully tie to them and to the shore as well. Let's see.
Really beautiful, lush island. Amazing approach. There's a beautiful beach just on our port side here. The plan is to climb up the volcano whilst we're here. It looks pretty steep and intimidating from down here on the boat. Apparently it's semi-active, but hopefully it's not going to explode. As we beat into the anchorage, we thought of the old square-rigged ships that came trading here for spice back in the 1600s.
Ahead of us, our friends Gemma and Andy on pause are ready and waiting to take our lines. We have not seen them since Vanuatu last year.
As it is so deep here, it's difficult to anchor. Instead, we rafted alongside Paws and put out mooring lines to secure us between a big ship's mooring and a nearby tree. You might need a bit more length.
Then it was time to hand over their new mainsail, which we'd carried from Australia and Florence for them. Their old mainsail fell apart, and getting a replacement into Indonesia is very difficult.
Thank you! That's shiny.
That looks really good. Oh my word. That's really strong.
We were welcomed to Banda as part of the rally fleet by the enthusiastic local marching band.
There are advantages and disadvantages to being part of the rally. The Indonesian people are so friendly and welcoming, yet it seems that every official wants to give us a lengthy welcome speech in Indonesian.
But there are also opportunities to do and see things that would be difficult to make happen if we were here on our own. In this part of Indonesia, racing traditional war canoes is a big sport. And here, as part of the rally, we were given the opportunity to climb aboard and join in a race ourselves.
Each village has a racing canoe team. Having left half of their crew ashore in return for some dubious-looking sailors, they were keen to test us out with some paddling practice.
You're strong. Nice. Okay.
As we lined up for the start, a serious air came over the boat. The competition between the villages is fierce, and despite carting a boatload of tourists with them, village honour was still at stake.
It was time to find out a little bit more about what put these islands at the centre of the world trade map back in the 1600s. We took a local boat across to the neighbouring island where they grow something that was once worth more than gold.
Try to
This is to try because you put your hand behind and
Here in the nutmeg plantations, they still use the traditional method to harvest the fruit, using a bamboo pole and a basket to pluck it from the trees.
yeah. Oh, clever.
Once the lower fruits have been harvested, they climb the trees to access the higher fruit.
You look like local people.
I try.
Yeah. But if you the color like this,
Too green.
yeah,
Too green.
This is the skin we need for the. We want to make like a candy, nutmeg
Syrup.
jam, syrup.
All of the nutmeg trees are planted next to these towering tropical almond trees, which are essential to provide the shade that the nutmeg trees need to survive this close to the equator.
Nutmeg is not the only spice grown here. These are clove trees.
This lady's drying some of the spices that they grow here outside her house. So here we've got some mace, which is the initial outer coating around the nutmeg, and they export this for use in food and also cosmetics. And then we've got some cloves over here, which look like we're used to seeing them, quite dried. And then these are the greener cloves. And then
Just
over
not
here,
so dried yet, those ones, yeah?
yeah, these ones just aren't quite so dry. And then this is where the cloves are attached to, these twigs, and they dry these and burn them, and they're good for detracting mosquitoes apparently. And then this is the spice that the island is really famous for, the nutmeg. This is a smoking house for the nutmeg, and this gets smoked and then smashed open, and then inside is the nut, which is what we're used to seeing, which you can grate and use in cooking. But this is the highest quality, apparently. The tradition came from the Dutch to smoke the nutmeg rather than dry it in the sun.
Every house has got spices laid out to dry in the sun outside it. Not just one, it's not like a factory, just every single household is doing the same thing.
This cinnamon bark has been removed from the wood. The bark is knocked with a stone to loosen it from the wood, and then it's carefully peeled off using a sharp knife.
So this is cinnamon bark. It's just been peeled off the log. It's still wet and damp in my hand.
This is then dried in the sun before being ground to create the cinnamon powder we're most used to seeing at home. Back in the 1600s, these islands were the only place in the world that nutmeg grew, and it was so lucrative that traders would be able to come here, buy nutmeg, and then sell it back in Europe for a profit 60,000 times what they bought it for.
The crazy thing is that only one small bag of nutmeg returned at those prices could set someone up for life. But it was a huge risk because only 1 in 3 of the ships actually made it back. They had to go all the way around Cape Horn, didn't have the Panama Canal to cut through like we did. And the death toll from tropical diseases was terrible.
The huge value of the spice trade, of course, meant that these islands would be fought over by the European powers.
The Dutch built this fort in the 1620s. The ruthless Dutch governor of the time invaded the islands with 2,000 men and slaughtered 2/3 of the local population, giving the plantations to Dutch planters. The Dutch imposed a brutal monopoly on spice production, with fixed prices guaranteeing huge profits for the Dutch East India Company. The pentagonal fort survives to this day, despite numerous earthquakes and a volcanic eruption as recent as 1988.
In its heyday, nutmeg was worth more than gold. But the prices came down when nutmeg started to be grown in Grenada in the Caribbean, meaning a much easier voyage from Europe. That volcano that erupted in 1988 is the highest peak around here. Always a challenge to us.
The weather's cleared, we can finally see the top of the volcano. Last few days it's been pretty cloudy up there. But this morning we woke up and we can see the tip cloud free, so we're going to have a crack at climbing it.
We were joined by our friend Gemma from Pause for the hike up to the top.
The path is just going straight up, not zigzagging on the way.
It's pretty steep and really, really hot.
It's pretty hot and sweaty. A little bit of breeze now as we're getting towards the top. Every step we take forward, we slide back half that step. It's just loose rock, and it's so steep. Well, we made it. That was worth it. We can sit here happily in the knowledge that we've now climbed the highest peak around us.
There was one last thing that we wanted to do before we left Banda, and that was to visit one of the snorkeling spots. Unfortunately, these are a long way from where Florence is moored, so we're not sure about taking the trip in our dinghy. Luckily for us, our friends Ola and Michael offered us a lift.
Whilst Ola and Michael headed off into the depths diving, we set off to snorkel the shallower parts.
This is our first experience of snorkeling in Indonesia. We've heard so many conflicting things. On one hand, that the reefs are just full of plastic, and on the other, that it has some of the best snorkeling and diving in the world. So we're really interested to see what lies below the surface.
There's loads of small fish here, but hardly any larger ones. We guess they've all been caught by the fishermen, of whom there are many. We didn't see one fish big enough to eat.
There were lots of these bright, colourful, soft corals though.
The water is beautifully clear, and this far from the village there are only a few pieces of plastic rubbish.
We've had a fantastic time here in Banda. There's been such a great variety of history, friendly people and nature.
Next time we sail on to Wakatobi to explore their world-class reefs and find some new crew for Florence.
We'd like to give a special thanks to our star patrons for their support.
Alan Becky,
Kate and Peter Atkins,
Robin Reamer,
and Joshua Baxter.
We had a lot of fun filming and editing this episode, so please let us know what you think in the comments.
If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to catch the next one.